Over the last few weeks, we've looked at living an intentional life. Part of the things we looked at, and just to mention briefly, so I'm just doing what I shared with some folks yesterday in a preaching class, is repetition is good. And maybe you'll know that. But God has a purpose and a plan. If we're followers of Christ, we should want to know that as a part of our lives. We've looked at part of what it is to live our spiritual lives, a part of what it is to live in the life and ministry of the church. We've looked at what it means to be a part of the family of God as a witness of His love and grace, and then also with that focus on family. And today I want to look at what are the life benefits. Now, you sometimes think, and I know all of us probably have, when people look for employment, they usually start asking some questions. One is, they like to know if the job they're looking for, if it's a good fit for them. There's nothing any worse in life than to do something you really don't like to do. And some folks change after a while and say, this is not really what I enjoy. But they look at that. They look at the working conditions as a part of that. And then they start asking about benefits. Part of it may have been a part of those things that you've not looked at, but some do. And they look at all of it at a little bit different level. They look and say, first thing is they want to know is how much vacation is there. I mean, that's always a good idea. Hadn't started working yet, but you're already looking at vacation. But we ask that question. We ask about holidays. Are there holidays? We ask about, are there sick days? Are there personal days? What's the retirement, as a part of that? And then many times the question is there insurance? But what about the benefits of living an intentional life and letting God be the source of our life and our direction in life? One of the things about living an intentional life that you and I need to remember is that if you and I don't have an agenda, someone or something else will set the agenda for us. And that's a part of why we want to live intentionally. Let me mention a couple of things that were a part of this and just give a little bit of thought to that. First, we need to look at the purpose. We need to know about discipline. I'll define that a little bit more. Don't get scared. Well, remember, disciple is a part, the word discipline. It says something. But also, what's the vision? When I think about that as a part of it, we need to know that benefits in our lives do have a purpose. Some of you know I like to play golf. If you didn't know that, you'll know it now. But I like to look at unusual golf stories. And this is one that probably a lot of you haven't heard. But it was when a Scotsman wanted to introduce the game of golf to then President Ulysses Grant. So he took him out. They went out to a piece of ground and looking at not necessarily that many golf courses. Remember, that was a long time ago as a part of it. So the Scotsman took the ball that they had and on a tee, and he put it in the ground, and he had the club in his hand, and he swung mightily at the golf ball, hitting the dirt. And dirt went everywhere. It went all over President Grant as a part of that, and some lodged in his beard as a part of it, but something was different. The ball was still on the tee, never moved. Scotsman tried it again, did the same thing. Dirt went everywhere, the ball's still on the tee. 6 times, President Grant sat there graciously, not saying a word, and then he said these words. He said, "Sir, I see there is quite a bit of exercise involved in this game, but would you please tell me what's the purpose of the ball?" If you know anything about golf, there are a lot of things that are involved, but the ball is really at the forefront. And I think if we stop and look, it probably has a lot that can say to us about the way we live our lives. We run here and there and everywhere. We get a lot of exercise, probably not a lot that's really the greatest for us. Just running here, short walk, part of that. You have to do continual exercise to get the real benefit. But we run everywhere. But the question that I ask of us at this point, at the end of the day, when you've done everything that you have been called to do, has it really served a purpose? What purpose? Sometimes maybe for something that is momentary or something that's just in a short picture. But what are those things in our life have we done that have eternal meaning? There's an eternal purpose as a part of that. We recognize that, and we need to know how that fits in our life so that the purpose can say to us, this is why I do what I do. What's the end result as a part of it? It gives meaning to our lives. Purpose also can serve as an anchor. It keeps us from being tossed to and fro when life throws some hard things at us. Just think about it today. When you face difficulties in your life, what's the couple of things that you've thought of most that gives you strength and support and holds you on level ground? Families, and many times your faith and your friends. In the midst of that, when those things are going up and down in every which way, but it's that anchor. If not, we can have a tendency, which I would say, to be seasick. The anchor is that thing that holds us in place as a part of that. Seasickness is basically motion sickness. Have you ever been there? Have you ever been there? Have you ever had motion sickness? I'll tell you what, I have, and it's no fun. I was fishing in the Gulf of Mexico, and I remember, and we were there with Regina's family as a part of that. And there was a part of this, I was as sick as I could be. Let me say that. Found myself over the side of the boat as a part of it. But we had gone into a school of sea bass, and we were catching them. And I would lean over the side, and I'd wheel in a bass. Lean over the side as a part of that. One other time I remember I got on one of those crazy rides at Six Flags, and I got off that thing, and I was sick as a dog. I said, Lord, I promise you I'll never get back on another one of these things the rest of my life. But let me turn that around. Do you feel that somewhat that way in daily life? The going and the going and the going, and all of a sudden you're just exhausted. And at times, without having something to anchor us in life, we want to say, listen, world, stop for just a moment and let me catch my breath. We've all been there. As parents or grandparents as a part of that, you look at your children and they have children as a part of that, your grandchildren, and they're running all the time, and you try to keep up with them. Hey, just wait a minute. Is all of this necessary? But think of the hardships and the difficulties of life. We need an anchor to hold on to. The other thing is purpose keeps us from being distracted. Now, besides golf, my enjoying golf, I also like baseball. And right now, the World Series is going on. I'm not going to talk about the two teams that are playing now, but let me take you back to a day gone by in World Series. Again, I like some of those unique stories. It's a story about Yogi Berra, who was a catcher for the New York Yankees, and Hank Aaron, who was an outfielder for then the Milwaukee Braves. Someone said to me this morning when I told that, he said, I remember the Boston Braves. Now, that is way back there. We know they're Atlanta. But anyway, they were in the World Series. Aaron was coming up to bat, and Yogi was known for trying to do things that would distract the hitters. He'd say all kinds of things. And on this particular day, he said to Aaron, when he came to the plate, he said, Hank, you're holding the bat wrong. He said, you're supposed to have the trademark so you can read it. Aaron never said a word. After the first pitch, the second pitch came in, and Aaron lofted the ball out of the park into the left field stands for a home run. He made his way around the bases, and he came across home plate, and he kind of looked at Yogi at that point, and Yogi didn't know what to say, so he didn't say anything. And this is what Aaron said. Yogi, I didn't come up to the plate to learn how to read. I didn't come up to the plate to learn how to read. He was there to hit. And part of that, his attention was not to be distracted. He knew what his purpose in life. But friends, we have all kinds of distractions. There are distractions every Sunday morning when I preach. I am not so foolish as to think that you're sitting there just waiting to soak up like a sponge every word I say. There are some sponges here, but there's probably some rocks here too. It's just like water rolling off a duck's back. But a part of it is when we have that, there are distractions in life, and that's a part of the evil one's process. The evil one wants to keep us distracted from doing the things that give us a quality of life and living intentionally. And we have to be aware of that and on guard if we want the benefits of living an intentional life is so that we know that we have purpose without distractions. The second part is discipline. Now that's not correction or punishment. It's called self-control. Y'all know about that? We all should. Would anybody say that they've got that mastered? Having self-control is to make sure that we do the right things. As a part of our lives, we share in that. We remind them, have you ever heard of this? Good intentions are not enough. And sometimes the good is the enemy of the best. We hear this word all the time. I do, you do, you've heard it all your life. Good job. Good job. But is it the best? If you're going to an auto mechanic or if you're going to a doctor and through all the process there, you don't want just a good job, you want the best job. But has that come apart in our life and in our faith? Do we do just enough? We do a good job, but really not our best as we serve God as a community of faith or in our individual lives? We need to know that, and we need to share that in a special way. There are a lot of folks, all of us have good ideas and good plans, but sometimes we don't follow through on them. There have been a lot of good ideas. How many good ideas could have become great at that point, but somebody didn't follow through? Regina has said to me every once in a while, she'll see some advertisement of something that comes on there, and she said, I had that idea. But she didn't seek to get somebody to look at it and get a patent on it. Part of it. Just think of what it could have been. All of you probably had some ideas. Do you remember how Velcro came about? If you're a farmer, you ought to know. They developed Velcro after they found out about cuckleburrs. Saw these little things that stick all over you. Not stick tights. You can't get stick tights off even if you want to as a part of that. That's what I call them. But the cuckleburrs. And they realized that you could create fabric with a particular kind of material and another, and Velcro as a part of looking at that. But good ideas that become the best is a part of our lives. The benefit of doing the right things is a part of that. If we're disciplined, self-control. I went back to a follow-up for my physical. And another follow-up is a part of that, but this is the one I want to tell you about today. And a part of that, they said, your sugar levels are a little bit up and you need to try take care of it and come back again. We'll do lab work again and check it. So I went back thinking I was just going to do lab work, and they set me in the room, and I had a conversation with one of the doctor's assistants and began to describe all of these things of how you take care of that. First you do it by diet as a part of that, and then you also do exercise. Well, I'm just going to confess to you as a part of that, my life's been crazy in a lot of ways, and I found myself eating a lot more fast food over the last 4 to 6 months than I probably should have. I also kind of got out of my everyday routine, still occasionally, of doing the exercise. So I said, okay, Dale, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Well, I've tried to start doing that as a part of it. And as the end result, when that discipline is there and that self-control, what should be the end result if I do what I'm supposed to do? Do you know? Hopefully, better health, right? Same thing is true in our spiritual journey. Self-control is a part of that. Will produce, again, those things that you and I want. To have that peace and that sense of fulfillment and understanding is a part of it. But we have to take control of it. We have to be those who are willing to do that. Discipline helps us live beyond the surface of things. Now, I don't know where you agree with this statement or not, but I think a lot of people they really like to live in the shallow end of the pool. And why? It's because when you live in the shallow end of the pool, there are minimal risk. How many of your children, your grandchildren, when they learn to swim, you say, now, you've got to stay in the shallow end of the pool. Anybody ever said that? I have. It's a part of that. And then when you learn to swim better, where do you get to go? You get to go in a little bit deeper water. And you get in the deep water, and guess what? There's a lot more fun in the deep end, but as parents with children early on in swimming, they realize there's a lot more danger. But we'd rather not take a risk. Do you remember that song that we sung for a number of years? I have decided to follow Jesus. Remember that song? Do you remember some of the verses? Though none go with me, still I will follow. There's some risk when you go at things by yourself. But part of it is a family of faith. We know that others are called to do that, to take some risk, to show the love and the grace of God in the midst of that. Because there's risk in life. Chuck Swindoll, some of you may remember him. He wrote a book called The Quest for Character a few years, and he made these comments in his book. He says, all who fly risk crashing. All who drive risk colliding. All who run risk falling. All who walk risk stumbling. All who live risk something. Life is a risk in many ways. But a part of that is having that balance in our life, to having that purpose, and to know the deep things of God and that God is with us when we do that. Balance also breeds, again, that balance. I can remember a story, and some of you could probably help. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, and someone said, well, I remember a part of that. But any of you ever be on a bicycle and just love the speed of going down a hill? It's no fun riding a bicycle up the hill, is it? But man, the thrill of going down the hill, the wind in your face and faster and faster. Well, some of us guys used to do that. And the thing is, we always had a little wager against somebody. Who would be the one that could get all the way down the hill, but there was something different about just going down the hill. Where we were riding, there was also a fairly sharp curve. And the wager was, how far can you go? Can you make it around the curve without putting on the brakes? Now, that's kind of asking for trouble, isn't it? Yeah, it is. I don't know if too many of us had ever made it around the curve, but I know that several of us went flying over the side. We went over the side and missed the curve, and sometimes we ran into a fence. Sometimes we ran into some briars or some bushes or a tree, and heaven forbid that we would run into a wall of some sort. But sometimes that's the way we live our life. We take some risk on other things that are really not good choices. But if we're disciplined as a part of that in our lives to give us that balance in life, sometimes we learn from those mistakes. Hopefully we always learn from a mistake, don't we? But a lot of things, I'll just say this for me, you get to listen in. If I'd have made some right choices, I could have saved myself some difficulty and probably some pain somewhere in my life. So that benefits of living an intentional life following Christ have wonderful benefits. And a part of that is that self-control. And the last part is a vision. Gives us a vision to know as a part of our lives where we're headed and where we're directed, and that there is a final destination that's an end of our life in this sense. Bill Hybels tells in one of his books, he tells about a mom and dad and their son, Jimmy. They just finished eating dinner one night, and mom and dad were busy doing some things, and Jimmy was off playing and doing some things. And a part of that, everybody was busy, and nobody was watching the clock, and it was past Jimmy's bedtime. Mom jumped up real quick, and she said, Jimmy, it's past your bedtime. Go up and get dressed for bed, and I'll be up in a few minutes to check on you. I've never quite understood what that means. Why do they need to check? Because sometimes kids go up there and it can take them forever to get ready for bed, and they don't get in bed. So a little bit later, Jimmy's mom went up. Jimmy was ready for bed. He'd gotten dressed for bed, but he was sitting down on the floor looking out the window at a moonlit sky. Just absolutely beautiful. Mom walked in the door and she said, Jimmy, why aren't you in bed? He said, oh, Mom. So he made his way over and started climbing in the bed. And then he turned around to his mom and he said this. He said, Mom, one of these days I'm going to walk on the moon. Mom said, okay, put him to bed. 32 years later, Jimmy walked on the moon. He'd also survived a motorbike accident when he was in his teens, had several broken bones, and was in just a few inches of his life. But he was determined you want to know the rest of Jimmy? Do you know his name? Well, Jimmy was what he was called when he was a boy, but it's Jim Irwin. One of only a few men who've ever walked on the moon. He knew that he had a purpose. He was disciplined to go through. He had a vision that started on the side of his bed, looking out the window saying, this is what I want to do. But how much greater? Today is All Saints' Day. Those candles burn as a reminder here as a part of that. But what I want to say to you this morning is, if we're going to live in intentional light and enjoy the benefits that those who've gone before us have reached and have recognized, then we need to follow. We remember them. We remember a part of their faith and a part of their journey that they didn't get to their eternal reward by not doing some things intentionally. Trace talked about those persons. Who's that witness? Who's that person that you look at, that you want to be just like them? Well, you can model after them, but guess what? God called you to be you. He didn't call you to be somebody else. But we need to be the best person that we can be, to live intentionally, to know God's plan and God's purpose, to know the spiritual depth, to know the sense of how we share in the life of the church, to know our witness, the importance of our family. But the benefits that we gain is that God's promise is, I am with you always, even until the end of the world. We recognize not only these from our church family this year, but many others. And I shared these words with you that come from Hebrews and finish. These are some of my favorite words. Hebrews chapter 11. It's one about faith. Now, faith is being sure of things we hope for and certain of what we do not see. And then over in verse 13, it talks about those people of faith, those who before they knew the love and the grace of Jesus Christ, and those of us as we live. It says, all these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance. And they admitted that they were aliens and strangers on earth. People who say such things show that they are looking for a country of their own. If they had been thinking of the country they had left, they would have had opportunity to return. Instead, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for He has prepared a city for them. Basically, it's a part that we are as followers of faith. Even on particular days when we're not thinking about that, we are those who are called, who are looking for a city whose builder and maker is God, who promise that if we live our lives in faith and follow Him, that one day we will be joined with Him for eternity. Eternity is just, in some ways, not to scare you, but we need to face the reality. Eternity for somebody, not necessarily here, but for somebody is one breath away. None of us have the promise of the next breath, but we have the promise that God is with us. So that when life tosses us to and fro, we are determined, we are intentional of saying, I will follow Jesus. May He be our vision. May He be our guide. And may we live our lives in such a way that it's a testament of faith to the love and the grace of Jesus Christ. Let's pray. Gracious God, take these words, as feeble as they are, transform them as they have come from my mouth into the ears of those who are here. May some of those words be transformed even into our hearts, that we might live an intentional life and glorify your name. Be our vision today and always. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Our